There are 6 participants in the conference. All participants are muted.
أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين نحمده ونستهديه ونستعينه ونستغفره ونؤمن به ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. With Allah's name, the merciful benefactor, the merciful redeemer. All praise belongs to Allah, the guardian evolver, cherisher, sustainer of all the realms of knowledge. We praise him, we seek his guidance, we seek his forgiveness, we seek his assistance, we seek his forgiveness, and we believe in him. We seek refuge with Allah from the evil within our own selves, and we seek refuge with Allah from the evil consequences of our actions. We openly bear witness that there is nothing worthy of worship except Allah, that he is alone and without partners. And we openly bear witness that Muhammad ibn Abdullah, to whom the Quran was revealed, is his servant and messenger. May the prayers and peace of Allah be upon him. And we'd like to thank Allah for giving us another opportunity to worship him on Yawmul Jumah. And we ask that he strengthen us and purify us and inspire us and keep us on Sirat al-Mustaqim. The topic for today is do not be deluded on the straight path or from the straight path. Allah in the Quran says in Surah 2 verse 23, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وإن كنتم في ريب مما نزلنا على عبدنا فأتوا بسورة من مثله وادعوا شهداءكم من دون الله إن كنتم صادقين صدق الله العظيم. A reflection on this verse, not a translation, but a reflection on the Arabic and the meaning is, and if you are in stubborn disbelief, deluded from the Quran, which we sent down on our God-fearing, obedient servant, and you claim that it is not from Allah, then bring a way of leaping with height that is similar to Muhammad and that which came with his prophethood. If you are truthful in your allegation, bring something similar through the assistance of those you estimate as above Muhammad the prophet. This is letting us consider that we should be alert to know that the Quran is free from error and crookedness. We should rely on it to judge our affairs, and not the whims of personal the whims of popular culture or ideas trending on social media. If you rely on influences other than God and the way of Muhammad the Prophet for your guidance, those other influences will lead you astray. And the Quran challenges us. It's challenging you as the listener or you as the reader. Throughout the Quran, when you're engaging it, you should be challenged intellectually, emotionally. I remember several years ago, well over a decade ago, hearing Imam W.D. Mohammed describe the Quran and our relationship with the Quran as you should see the Quran as almost like an intimate companion. You should see the Quran as your love. Think of the Quran as, my love. This is, you're going to be attached with the Quran your entire life. And if you see that, it means that if you stick with the Quran, you're going to grow with the Quran. So, right, it's never a point where you feel like you're separate from the Quran. The Quran is going to be with you. That's how we should appreciate it and see it. And this Quran will raise us up. It will raise our intellect. And it will address doubt, the idea of doubts. But not just doubt as we think of it as the English word, like, oh, I'm unsure of something. But doubt in the sense of being deluded from the truth or persuaded away from the way that is the correct way or the straight way. And if you think about crookedness and if you think about a road, if you think about a road that is straight, it's not necessarily that a road can be crooked. The idea is that the road is straight, but you can be crooked. You can be in error, right? So the way is straight. But if you're going this way or that way, you're going in circles, right? You're going to be deluded. You're going to be on a crooked path. So Allah is offering a challenge to those, this was during the time of the Prophet, that were doubting what the Prophet had brought. And the idea that if this came from, if the revelation and if, this essence of, the idea of following Muhammad the Prophet came, if this message came from someone other than Allah, then some other person with some other authority which should have been able to easily produce what we know as the Quran and what came with Muhammad the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. These signs, someone should have been able to easily produce these signs. But we can say that that has not happened. There's no other book like the Quran. If you think about it, around the world, throughout history, in its preservation, in its composition, I would say also in its impact, its immediate impact, if we look at history. We all know that the Quran, soon after the revelation was complete and the first generation, the first following generations that had it, that what came with it was immense scientific advancement, right? That came, and a lot of that was spearheaded because of this Quran that had come from a people that were in ignorance, and then had this new universal truth that they stood on that propelled them to advance in so many ways, not just science, but in culture, in literacy, right? Those of you who know the Quranic, the history of the Quran and the Arabic literature, right? That the literacy of Arabic was solidified by the Quran. You had people that were very oral, and then all the rules of grammar and the best speech was propelled by the Quran. Even the hygiene, the idea of cleanliness, right? From the revelation and from the practice of the Prophet, right? Because if you think about it, to be a Muslim and to practice this religion, once a week at the very least, you have to take a full bath, right? So embedded in the practice of this way of life is a way to keep you clean and to think of how to be free, how to rid yourself from impurities, right? On a physical level, but then that comes also on a much higher level as well. So what is this way, if we're to not be deluded from the straight way? What the Prophet's way is Sirat al-Mustaqim. And when we think about Sirat al-Mustaqim and we think about Muhammad the Prophet, prayers and peace be upon him, we should immediately also be thinking of the way of Abraham. Sometimes we lose the idea of that this path, this straight way that we're on is the way of the Abrahamic tradition at its root, right? Because doesn't the Quran even explain that Abraham, if you really think about it, you can't categorize him as a Jew or as a Christian in the sense that those designations came later, right, from his progeny. So Abraham is a father figure in the monotheism tradition, the Abrahamic tradition. And I think it's important for us to use this idea of the Abrahamic tradition. You often hear nowadays people talk, especially in the sort of social discussions, even in political discussions, people are talking about the Judeo-Christian tradition. But that's not the best term, especially even if we're talking about in the West. The term Judeo-Christian as a sort of combined term is a very new term. That term became popular really after World War II, because of things that were happening in the world. But, back in the day, years before, people didn't use that term. The Quran is pointing us, though, that the Abrahamic way is the way that Muslims are following. And so I think, if we're really to be accurate in terms of what is this tradition, it should be understood as the Abrahamic tradition, because what the Muslim perspective is a reviving or sort of bringing to fore what Abraham had put forth. What all the prophets, of course, put forth, right? This is not to dismiss the prophets before them. But Abraham has a very special place in world history, in the development of world religion. And so we need to latch on to that and remember that. Let's not forget the way the West evolved and developed what some people call the Judeo-Christian development or tradition in the West was spurred on or influenced by or really relied upon what Muslims had done in terms of knowledge, philosophy, and science, right? This is just historical fact. This is not to try to take the credit away from European civilization or European thinkers and science of Europeans. It's not, right? We don't want to get into this supremacy thing, right? Oh, they didn't do nothing, it all just came from Muslims. No, that's not the case. But the idea is that we understand that if we understand history, it was really the Quran that propelled, scholars and thinkers and scientists to go out, explore the world, reflect, and revive the tradition, the intellectual tradition of the past that they could find, whether it was in Roman, the Greek tradition, and to take the best from that and build upon it, right? And then that influence impacted the Christian and Jewish thinkers in Europe, who were sort of in communication and learned from what the Muslims have done. So we can't just think Jewish tradition, Christian tradition, Muslim tradition as some sort of separate thing. And we should also, one point I will also mention is that we also have this idea that the Abrahamic monotheism, because we're talking about Abraham, is that it's disjointed from the rest of the world. If you look at history, if you look at what people have written, you'll find that the monotheism tradition has been around in all cultures, even if it didn't proliferate in the same way as the Abrahamic tradition. There are writings of the history of the European explorers. We always think of this idea that, the Europeans came and they brought this and they changed the Native Americans and they, forced their religion upon them, which of course did happen. But if you actually want to get to the nuances of it, if you want to look at the history, you even have European scholars during the age of the exploration, they called it, when the old world and the new world were mixing, where they documented Native American groups in the Americas. There were different beliefs. Of course, you had just some worship, different modes of worship, idol worship, etc. But there's actual writings where some of these explorers would say, yeah, but this particular group, it seems their religion is all based on just one God. They don't have a whole bunch of different deities, right? And this is in, these writings in like the 1500s and 1600s to show you that, human culture is varied, and this idea of monotheism is not something that only comes from one part of the world, that Allah sent this to all peoples, right? And you can understand that you can get to this thinking. Many people did, but culture can dissuade you or delude you from the straight path. So we understand and stand on the idea that the Quran is bringing the Abrahamic way. And many people may dismiss it in popular culture, and they may ignore it, but it's up to us because we understand the Quran. Maybe some people don't talk about the Quran's role in the scientific revolution and preceding the Renaissance because they don't understand the Quran. They don't understand, a lot of people, maybe some of them don't want you to understand the role of Islam, but some people, they don't have a connection to the Quran, so for them, they see all these, what they would think Arabs and Muslims doing all these great things, they don't think about what inspired because they're not intimate with the Quran, right? We're intimate with the Quran. It's propelling us, and if we're doing that, then we can make the connections between what the Quran is propelling the reader to do and then later advancement, scientific and cultural advancement, because we should know the Quran. So let us consider the Prophet's way in totality. And we see this, and we can relate this to Abraham if we think about our prayer in the tashahhud, the second part of the tashahhud, when we're witnessing La ilaha illallah Muhammadan Rasulullah. But then at the second part of it, we also exalt Muhammad and his people. We ask Allah to exalt Muhammad and bless Muhammad and his people, just as he exalted and blessed and made successful Ibrahim alayhi salam and the people of Ibrahim, right? We're saying that all the time. So that shows us that we're really thinking and connecting to this Abrahamic way. So we're in that same line. But that should lead us to a question. Well, if the Abrahamic way includes, all the prophets brought this message, right, and it was probably present in cultures and prophets that we don't even know about, then why should we focus on the way of Muhammad? What is so special about Muhammad? And I would say that the answer to that is in Al-Fatiha, where we say, Ihdina sirata mustaqim, where we're asking God to guide us on the straight way. And then what follows from that dua, from that request. It's clear that we're seeking to stay on a way where religious people get Allah's blessing and grace, the blessings and the grace of God, the ni'mah of God. That's the race, that's the path that we want to be on. And we don't want to be where sometimes religious people go, where they wander off course, right? And that's part of crookedness, right? If you go away, if you go off the path, you wander off course. And it could be different ways. Maybe it's out of ignorance, maybe lack of knowledge. But we also don't want to be of those who gain the wrath in a different way. By how? By knowingly violating the rules and the boundaries and the design or the guidelines that God has set. Those are two examples of ways to not continue to get God's blessings, right? To just kind of go astray or to directly go in the opposite way or to cross the boundaries that God has given. So Muhammad's way points us to the Abrahamic idea of monotheism, and that as a people of faith, we could lose Allah's blessings if we don't stay on the straight way. So if we're deluded, the way is straight, and if you get deluded either by just, going by ignorance, going astray, going off, maybe you're just a little bit off. The path is clear, but you're just kind of going here. Before you know it, right, if anyone knows a little bit about math, right, that array will take you way off because you're just off by 1 degree, and then you can go off and not hit the mark, metaphorically. So we don't want to be that. We don't have to say, even though I brought up sort of Judaism and Christianity indirectly, we don't have to see it in a category like, oh yeah, don't be like the Jews, don't be like the Christians. That's not, the point is about, remember, this is, we want to follow Abraham.
This is a message to religious people. This could be a message to people in any time and location, no matter what they call themselves, is that the way for God's grace is to stay on that path, to seek that help, and to follow his wisdom and his guidance so that you don't get into those categories, right? And we see it's a commentary for us to reflect on what could happen to people of faith. So the Quran is key. If we think about revelations that have come before, the Quran is key, supported by the practice, the rituals, and the way of Muhammad the Prophet, and his conduct and balanced approach. And I think that's what we know in Muhammad's tradition is intact. We are able to stay in line with the Abrahamic monotheistic tradition because there is a middle way. The Prophet's way is this middle way between the spiritual and the worldly, right? Where the spiritual, the otherworldly, and the worldly are integrated harmoniously. It's also, you could consider the balance between hard formality and just having hard formality, just rules and being very sort of callous, and soft emotionalism, right? Everything is emotion. Everything is just what you want, right? Everything just sounds good, right? Religious groups can be like that. You can just be very hard, like you're just all about the rules, that's all you know, and that's all that kind of you build on. And then some religious people can just be so soft that it's really just based on emotion and what makes them feel good. Muhammad's tradition is not that, right? It is a balance between the worldly. And if you think about the practice of our religion, reflect on other religious groups. Remember, the challenge is see if others could bring the same thing and have the same impact with what Muhammad brought. Think about other groups and your practice of what we're doing here. I think you can make an objective commentary that the Islamic practice is excellent in integrating that spiritual world with the worldly world. In that your spiritual practice is not just something that nobody sees in public and you just kind of do it over here in your private time away from the public square, right? Islam is not that, right? Because why? The whole world is a masjid. So the way even we approach it is that you can pray anywhere. The time comes, you're praying 5 times a day. So it's integrating that your awareness of God into your worldly life, even if you just stop for a few minutes and you make your prayer and then you go on about your business, right? That's something I think is very unique to the Islamic tradition. The straight way is not one of doubt, but for it to be a way that leads straight, it has to be based on a universal truth, which we'll talk about in the second section of the khutbah. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد اللهم بارك الله محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد. So this idea of universal truth, let's reflect on it. Some may say objective truth. There's some news event happened recently, and I'll be careful how I bring this up because it can get very sensitive, but bear with me to try to talk about this in a balanced way. And I'm not going to name names because sometimes you name people's names and it gets us away from the key point. But there was a recent development here in the Washington, D.C. area, where there were students at a local university, I think it was the George Washington University Law School, where there was a protest about a certain judge. And again, I won't name the judge, but this is a certain high-profile justice who taught at the school. He co-taught at the school every year, and this had been going on, I guess, for a while. But the law students protested with the idea they did not want this particular judge, because they didn't like his rulings or whatever, to teach at the law school anymore. And in the paper where they talked about their critique of this person, they criticized him and they said that this judge, he shouldn't be teaching here because these were his words, or these were their words. They said because they believe he wants, quote unquote, to strip individuals with uteruses of the right to medicine and queer individuals their right to legally exist, close quote. And so I thought that was a very sort of interesting thing to reflect on, that quote, right? To strip individuals with uteruses of the right to medicine and queer individuals their right to legally exist, right? This is at a law school. And this was why they felt this individual should not be teaching at the GW Law School. What we are dealing with is a crisis of objective truth, or I might say from a religious idea of universal truth. That we're in this state of the world now where there's a lot of questioning of the idea or the belief that there are God-given universal principles that you can use for your conduct or to stand on. And a way to think about this is just think about some terms that are out of fashion that you don't hear in the public sphere much today, like moral. Morality is kind of it's almost now become a passé term. You don't hear moral decisions, moral discussions. Moral is not as popular a term as it was 20 years ago, or even 15 years ago, definitely decades ago. And even wisdom. Wisdom, I mean, we may think about it because we understand, Allah is al-Hakim, we understand hikmah, right? Which is the idea of you're not only just judging, but to have hikmah is to be able to know how things fall into place, right? The logic of things, how things should fit, because there's this idea of a universal standard for conduct and there's universal truth. So wisdom means you know how things should fit, right? These terms, you don't hear them. Wisdom is not something people think about, especially in our sort of public discourse. We don't talk about, well, what is the wise decision, right? We talk about all the types of political reasons and this and that. We don't talk about, well, what is wise for people to do? And we don't say, well, what is the moral component to that policy or to that pathway forward? And this is interesting. It's why it's important to understand history, because in the 1800s, there was something else that happened in America and in the West. There was something called the Victorian crisis of faith. And the crisis of faith in the 1800s was something that America and Europe dealt with because of scientific advancement, and many religious groups, particularly Christian groups, began to question Bible literalism. You had the people wondering, wow, with all the science is doing so many things and science has proven this, can I stand on the Bible as a way to orient my life? Or what should be the influence of religion in the public? You started to see this tension during this time. It was really a crisis. And from it, there was a big breakup and a splintering. You had people in the West, looking into other religions and looking into other ways of dealing with the world. People still wanted to be connected to religion, but they started to look towards the East. You had some people looking into like Hinduism and Buddhism, and even there was some looking into Islam. But most Muslims didn't really take advantage of this. I mean, the Muslim world at the time was dealing with its own issues, and of course was dealing with the West sort of in opposition to it in many ways. So there were only a few Muslims that tried to engage the European world and the Western world at this time, right? That's a little side note. Different groups responded differently within the Muslim community and within the West. The strategy that some Muslims had to try to engage the Christian elites that they felt were splintering and looking for something, it didn't really work because they were really targeting the elites of Western society. It didn't really work. You had a few people who became Muslim. Some of you know Alexander Graham Webb, one of the most high-profile American converts at the time, a Caucasian convert. But it didn't really latch on. It wasn't until several decades later, through mostly the African-American experience, did you have a large group of Americans, people born in the West, start to latch on to Islam. So why do I mention all that? Because it's interesting looking at what's happening in our society. I would say that there's a certain crisis that's happening now in the public space. And some of you maybe are noticing it. There's this crisis of universal truth, and it's manifesting as a crisis of normality. What is the idea of normality? The idea is that there's something called normal, for lack of a better term. The idea that you can have a universal truth that offers morality of conduct, which offers a floor, right? Most of us are on the floor right now. Your universal truth, if there is universal truth, what it does is it orients you as there is a floor. There's certain things that you do and you don't do. There's a floor that we can all stand on. And it's based on some sort of guidance, right? That's higher than us, that's bigger than us, right? This would be the Abrahamic tradition and other traditions, right? But this idea that if you have a universal truth, then you have a floor for moral conduct. And the thing is, if there is no universal truth, if there's no objective truth, then you really don't have a morality. You can't have a morality. There's no floor. In fact, there's no ceiling. There's no border. Why? Because if there's no universal order or truth, objective truth that I can sort of check myself on or base my conduct on or base my thinking on or my way forward on, then it's just maybe what somebody said. Maybe some teacher said, some wise person, a philosopher. But what elevates that person's thinking to say that I should use that as my way of approaching the world? It's really, there's no authority. So if there's no universal truth, and universal truth, if you think about it logically, right, can only come from a source higher than just you. So we're in this, we're in this mode where, because there's a question about, is there even a universal objective truth? Then the boundaries fall off. The borders, there are no borders. And this, getting back to Sirat al-Mustaqim, comes to crookedness, comes to doubt, being deluded, because if there's no border on your path, right, if there's no boundary which sort of tells you, here are the boundaries of your conduct, here are your boundaries of your inquiry, of your investigation, of your cultural expression and your seeking. If there are no boundaries, then any way leads to the destination. There is no destination, right? You can do whatever, and anything can be good as long as some person argues that that's their way forward. So the idea that we used to take advantage of, normal or, that falls away. And you see this in ideologies which have you to question reality. The idea that everything is a construct. Everything can simply be constructed. There is no universal truth, no universal law, no universal conduct, no universal morality, the people will say. And what does that mean? They would say that it's all constructed. It's all created to make you think you need to obey, to make you think, oh, you need to do X, Y, Z. These are just man's rules that somebody made up. So if that's the case, I can do what I want to do, and there's really no idea of a moral element to my decision, to my policy, to my thinking. Let's mention one movie that I know has probably been mentioned on this, across this podium many times as we get ready to end. A movie which came out a long time ago, and that I know those of us who saw it back then probably thought about what it meant to our society. But I will say that this movie, as we look at it now in 2022, it comes off even very different. And I'm going to propose how to think about this movie. The movie is The Matrix, right? The Matrix. Many of us know, very deep, symbolic movie. The Matrix, though, if you look at it now, just watch, even if you don't watch the whole thing, you just watch like the first 30 minutes of it. The Matrix, if you remember the movie, The Matrix, and they said this, was basically a construct. In fact, there's one where the Morpheus character, he says to Neo, this is a construct. He's explaining that the way that the Matrix is built is it's really just a construct of rules, right, of norms. And the Matrix is artificial. And the point in the movie, this is interesting, you got to think about, is what the movie's saying. The movie is saying that this artificial construct is enslaving you. It's enslaving people, right? If you remember, right, that was all the people were enslaved, and they were in the Matrix but didn't realize that they were slaves to this construct. And then if you broke out of the construct, you could do anything you wanted to do. You could be anything you wanted to be. You could be a kung fu expert if you understood it was all just a construct. You could dodge bullets because the bullets are just a construct. You could fly in the Matrix world because everything, these rules are not real. It's just construct. It's not the objective reality of the world. By the Matrix, you do anything you want. And looking at that movie, it lands differently today than when we first saw it. Because as we look at elements in our society, what I just described are basically the nuts and bolts of what developed in sort of Western circles in the mid-20th century and then beyond of something called critical theory. The idea of critical theory is an intellectual tradition that sort of gained, which basically in a nutshell just says that everything in society is a construct. And it's usually a construct of power. And there are power groups. And what you must do intellectually, this is the sort of intellectual tradition, you must deconstruct these constructs, these boundaries. They mean nothing. They only mean something if you give them power, and you should break them. So the Matrix was, in essence, you know, if you think about it, and also if you think about some of the behind-the-scenes things, what I won't get into in terms of the makers of the movie, some of you will get the connection of that film. I think what they were trying to say is that, you know, you can make your own reality. And the rules of the world are not rules that you should respect. Why? Going back to the idea of there's no real universal truth. There is no God, is what this type of thinking, in essence, is saying, right? And if you don't have God, then there's nothing for you to hold on to for your conduct. And this, getting to that question as we conclude, of that quote from earlier, critical theory, and specifically you're seeing it now in what has become, it's funny, this used to be an intellectual thing that was sort of off in the fringes. But even aspects of critical theory now, one of it is queer theory, right? Queer theory, I mean, don't get scared because I mentioned it in a khutbah. Queer theory is a part of the critical theory tradition, which basically says that one should challenge the notion of norms around sexuality and gender. The idea that all of that is a social construct. Gender is rules or boundaries on sexual norms. All of that is constructed, putting the idea of how do you identify yourself as a gender. All of that really falls under the idea of you should question reality. And you should question the physical world, right? And so this is now on the stage, and it's funny because as Muslims, we're sort of in the midst of this. This is a sort of a reckoning that's happening in our society right now, and I don't know if we're like even clued into it like we should. This is part of something bigger, this idea of society, civilization, America, now trying to operate when there is no universal truth. And what happens when people decide, well, this is my truth, and this is how I want to construct reality. I may have a physicality, but my physicality should not make you call me this. You should call me X. It's the idea that the physicality itself, that's what queer theory really was trying to do. Queer theory is trying to take the physicality of sexuality and say that doesn't matter. You could do it what you want. You can bend it. You can create your world. And this impacts us because now you're getting asked, well, what's your pronoun? You're getting questions you weren't asked 5 years ago. You're getting asked, should you be, and should you say he or him or she or she? Somebody's looking at you and they will ask you, well, what is your pronoun? All right, and we think it's, well, just to be polite, okay, well, I'm a he, and this, we're actually falling into an underlying questioning of reality, and we're actually giving service to the idea that there is no reality that you can base your conduct on and your thinking on, and it's whatever you want to create. Gender is fluid, and just acknowledge that it's to try to acknowledge that. And everything is detached. And it's funny, and I'll leave, I mentioned that one news issue. I'm going to give you one quote where another person on the other side of the political spectrum has a quote. Many of you know who this person is, but I'm not going to name the name because I don't want to get into politics on this. This person said, "The measure of any society is how it treats its women and girls." And I think we would all agree with it, right? That just makes a lot of sense. You can judge a society by how it treats women and girls. But then the question comes, there's a circular argument if you can say, well, a woman is what? Because if being a woman, or man, but I'll just take a woman since that's what the quote says, is detached from physicality. It's not, so it's this idea of saying sex is one thing, gender is another thing. And they really are not related. I mean, there is sex, but your gender can be totally different, not based on your physical nature. So if you do that, then so then a woman might be born as someone might be a girl at birth, but then they decide that they're, or a boy, and then they decide they're a girl, well, because they're identifying as a woman. Well, then what is a woman? Well, is it connected to what physical or not? Because if it's not connected to the physical, then what is it to say you are a woman? Because it's if it's a construct. But what is the construct? I mean, it's crazy in my in my opinion. I'm sorry if I don't mean to get kind of excited there. But this just shows the idea of basing things on conjecture. It's not about a universal truth. It's about you can construct your reality and you should deconstruct the norms that that society has had. And sometimes people come with a good reason because maybe there's been oppression. Maybe there has been wrong. So the idea is, well, there's been wrong. People have been using and have been oppressing people. So we are going to destroy the whole idea that there is an objective reality and norms. And then you might be like, well, yeah, I'm not for oppression. So, okay, call me he, him, or call me she, And we're unaware of the civilizational discussion that's happening right now. So, this is affecting us in so many ways, but not just us. The interesting reason why we should see that this is bigger than even Islam and Muslims, quote unquote, is that now if you notice, you hear what's being said in society, now there's this crisis. Many people are seeking a floor. They're seeking a balance. They're seeking boundaries. And reflect on this. The straight path is a path of God-guided boundaries. It's a path that is steep. And we're hearing in our culture, in the culture of America and in the West in particular, I would say evangelical Christians, if you listen, you will hear radical feminists, and even some atheists are criticizing how this type of critical theory is trying to revamp and reshape how we interact with each other. So that's a sign there that people are looking for something. They're looking for, I would say, a universal truth because they see what happens when you have no floor, when you have no borders, you have no boundaries. So that quote before talked about people with uteruses. That's just another word these students were trying to say, what we would call women. But the terminology is used, individuals with uteruses, because the idea is that you can be an individual with a uterus and not be a woman, or you can be a woman and not have a uterus, right? That's why they said that. Access to medicine. What was that? This is all language. They're talking about abortion. Because they felt that this judge rules on the wrong side when it comes to how the government should enforce or police abortion. And then, so what does that mean for us, right? Culturally, there's been such a shift. I will reflect on one other movie recommendation. This was on a few years ago. The actor Sidney Poitier had passed away, a month or two ago, right? And they had a marathon of Sidney Poitier movies, and a movie came on, A Raisin in the Sun, which I don't know if you all have seen. It's a great movie, especially from the African-American community that came on in the 60s. And there's a great part in the movie where there's so many great scenes in that movie. It was a play in the 50s, and then they made a movie in the 1960s. And there's this one part where the grandmother, the matriarch of the film, she's critiquing some of the younger generation, and she says, and she's really talking about the African-American tradition. She says, we are a people who give life, not take it away. And the context of that, I mean, you could watch the movie, but what she was expressing was, there's lots of other scenes in that movie that show we're a moral people. We believe in God. You might not believe in God out there, but in this house, there is a God. If you remember that scene from the play, right? This was a commentary on, well, what is happening to the African-American community as it's going through all these social shifts. Hey, we always held on to one thing. And in her mind, it would have been, we hold on to God's word. She would say the Bible, right? But it's this idea that we hold on to something bigger. No matter what troubles you're dealing with, no matter economically, politically, we are bound by this covenant, right? This covenant with God. And that is leaving us. So I'll end with this. The way of Abraham keeps us in tune. It keeps us in a balanced way from the worldly and the spiritual, right? From the formal and the emotional. But it also keeps in touch physically because we come together. The physical world is part of God's creation. So when you stay engaged physically with the physical real world, you are more engaged with the true reality, al-haq. When you're engaged in the physical world. Now, the virtual world has a sign of things, but the virtual world is not the physical world, and it is not, if you have something that's created by man, by human being, it's not what God has designed directly. So you're removed. So staying in touch with the physical world keeps you in touch with God's signs. It doesn't just mean you go camping. Camping is one way, one excellent way, but it also means coming together for prayer, right? We're required right? Friday, we must come together side by side. Congregational prayer. And isn't it interesting that what is obligatory, what is fard, is the congregational prayer. Two Muslims are in two different rooms, right? And it's time to pray. They are supposed to come together. Not, okay, you just pray over there, and I pray over there, right? So what is that showing us? What is obligatory in this part of our religion is the physical coming together. That is a sign. Don't you think in the pandemic, our society has missed that? Missed the idea of having to come together? And we have to be very careful because we can't let the virtual overtake. We can't let, I'm concerned now about Hajj. I'm concerned that, don't laugh, you might want to laugh, that Hajj we know is a physical journey. I'm concerned that somebody's going to start a campaign to make Hajj virtual in the metaverse. I can almost see the writing on the walls that people say, well, why don't we just virtually do tawaf and virtually go, you'll go that way if you're not connected to God's signs as they were laid down, right? To the ritual that the prophet brought, which is a revival of the Abrahamic way. You could go off and think, well, I can just do it virtually and it's the same. The Quran and Muhammad's way is telling us to come together, it's having us stay in touch, physical, no matter what happens. Of course, in the pandemic, we adjust, right? This is not to say that we defy health concerns, but we understand what is the real thing. And we don't think that what is virtual, what we can create, is as good as, right? And our practice keeps us in touch to that. So people are looking for normality. They're looking for a floor. They're looking for something in society. And we should know it's right here. It's here in the Quran, if we stay close to it. It's in the prophethood of Muhammad. And it's in the straight path. We must hold on to the rope of Allah. And we can do it by staying in tune with the Quran and with the way, the example of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Anything which I have said which has been good comes from Allah. Anything which has been in error is due to me. And I seek refuge with Allah from any from mistakes. And I know after we do the salat, there will be an announcement. We're going to have a guest. I forget the brother's name, but he's going to make an important announcement, one of our local political leaders. So just stay tuned for that. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. Our Lord, give us good in this life, good in the next life, and save us from the torment of the hellfire. Ameen. أقم الصلاة.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. La ilaha illallah.
Okay. One more person maybe come on. Okay, let's straighten our lines. How are we looking back there in the back? Allahu Akbar. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين ألم نشرح لك صدرك ووضعنا عنك وزرك الذي أنقض ظهرك ورفعنا لك ذكرك فإن مع العسر يسرا إن مع العسر يسرا فإذا فرغت فانصب وإلى ربك فارغب الله أكبر.
سمع الله لمن حمده الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد الله أكبر سمع الله لمن حمده الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر السلام عليكم ورحمة الله السلام عليكم ورحمة الله
Assalamu alaikum. I want to thank our dear brother, Yaya Fanusie, on time, Jumah. We thank him for that, and obviously he discussed some topics that we need to talk about. In fact, the world needs us to talk about it, the society needs us to talk about it, because again, we have the final revelation in the form of guidance from Almighty God, and we have to be a part of these conversations that affect people's lives. We have a couple of announcements. Some things are coming this weekend and the next weekend as well, as I need to get you all prepared for what's going to be happening within the next 90 days about construction. Right now, I want to bring up one of our dear brothers. We do this for many others in the past. One of the good things about this one, and everybody's open to do this is one of our own brothers. His parents are very strong members of this community, and he's representing a present and future generation, a leader running for office here in D.C., and so we're going to bring him up and let him speak to you about that and kind of things he might need. So our dear brother, Kareem Marshall, you can come up.
Assalamu alaikum. So I have a normal campaign pitch that I do when I go to places, but it feels out of place. So what I'm going to do is tell you a little bit about who I am and how I got to where I am. My mother and father took the Shahada shortly before I was born. I grew up in this masjid. When that was Clara Muhammad Middle School and the Boy Scout troop was here, that was my middle school and that was my Boy Scout troop. So speaking here is a little bit like coming home, particularly because seeing some of the seniors that have been staples of this masjid is like running into my grandparents. So I have been the recipient of many blessings, and I've been extremely fortunate. I was able to go to Banneker for high school. I was able to go to Dartmouth, an Ivy League college, for college based off the foundation that I was given by this community. I came back to DC and became a lawyer. And we talked earlier today, we listened earlier today in the khutbah about the importance of a stable moral foundation. And one of the things that has driven me over the last 40 years is the understanding that on the day of judgment, I have to stand before Allah and explain everything that I did and why I did it. So I've approached my life from a perspective of how do I give back to the community? How do I make sure that as I'm spending my days, I'm spending them in ways that improve the lives of people who need it the most? So I'm running for city council, and our city council is set up so that we have 2 citywide seats. And the main reason I'm running is because our current crop of leaders have not served us well. This city has been aggressively gentrified over the last 20 years. The benefits of the increased economic activity that we've seen in this district over the last 2 decades have not touched our communities. It hasn't touched the people that we know need it the most. Our unemployment rate is really high. And we only talk about the unemployment rate, but what we don't talk about is the gap between the population and the employed rate. And that's the real measure of what's not touching our community. Our people don't have jobs, not because they aren't skilled, not because they don't want to work, but because the way we structured this economic recovery, the way we've structured the way we run our city has been focused on making sure that the people who have get more and the people who don't have move to Prince George's County. So one of the things that I'm focused on, like everybody talks about crime, everybody talks about education, everybody talks about making sure that we have enough in housing. I am focused, laser focused as a candidate on making sure that when I am done with my term on the council, your lives are better and that more people who needed our help actually got our help. So one of my volunteers is here. Her name's Kelly. She's in the back. And I've got a sheet too for the brothers. If you guys want to sign up to donate, to volunteer, to have any sort of space in the campaign to make sure that I'm staying on the right path as I do this. Look, don't shush the thing. It's fine. I got a 2-year-old. But my focus is to make sure that our community is better. And I know that having watched what we've done over the last 2 decades, that if something doesn't change now, particularly based off the economic climate we're about to go into in the next 2 years, it's only going to accelerate. And the District of Columbia that we had the opportunity to build a community in will not be the same space. So I hope you'll be able to assist us. I hope you'll be able to join the campaign. Again, my name is Kareem Marshall, and thank you so much for your time. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you.
So alhamdulillah, you see it yourself, again, born into the community, raised in the community, going through the school, so you know what his foundation is. And again, this is one of those 4 birds, the 4 birds in terms of government. And so we thank Allah for him, the initiative that he has and the aspiration that he has. So support him. He'll be outside, his table will be outside. Do what you can to support him financially, with help, etc. Okay, this weekend, Sunday at 1 o'clock, we're going to be having a brothers outing. It's going to be a brothers cookout, fish fry. We're going to also have a few types of board games, chess, coin toss, horseshoes, and some other things. It's going to be at Anacostia Park. 1 o'clock, it's going to start obviously with the prayer. We're going to make the prayer about 1:15, and then we're going to begin to engage, etc. And then we're going to talk about some serious business too while we are enjoying ourselves. So please come out 1 o'clock at Anacostia Park. That's this Sunday. September the 10th, this is another very important topic, and we've seen it all the time, especially when people pass, this topic comes up. A Wheels Workshop. So here at the Masjid at 10 a.m. at the Masjid, that's going to be Wheels Workshop. It's going to be hosted by the Capital Area Muslim Bar Association right here. Come get all the updated information. And they also talk about some templates and how they can get you set up on your wheels, which is something very important that all of us need to speak to. In fact, this is the word that's mentioned in the Quran, so very important. Okay, our capital campaign, again, we have the permit. If you don't know, you're hearing it for the first time. We do have our permit now from the city. They're giving us authorization to start doing this construction. So in the next 90 days, we've got a date set for October. It may change just a little bit depending on how things are coming. but I've been in negotiations with several of our partners in the area because we are going to have to be out of this place for some time while construction is undergoing. And we're looking at different ones in the area here. So in the upcoming days, probably next week or the week after, we would have solidified some type of agreement with one of our interfaith partners here to use space that we've already seen that meets the criteria that we need for the Jumah. So we can continue to have the Jumah service and also for some other things as well. So be on the standby for that. Once I conclude the different meetings and we look at the different options and see what's going to be the best one for us, then we'll let you know, the community will know. We're going to have a groundbreaking ceremony here. It'll be on this side right here. And then again, we're going to have that ceremony and then we're going to leave and follow up with some construction taking place here. We're still going to need some funds, but we are going to begin to work with the funds that we have while we continue the campaign. And the contractor is going to let us know at some point what's going to be needed for the next phase, so we can put the campaign out to get the funds as we need those funds to get that as well. Things have changed, so it's difficult right now because everything has changed over the past few years because of COVID. Everything has gone up. You see gas, they tell you right there, food, everything has gone up. So certainly building materials have gone, they're more than doubled. So that definitely affects what we're trying to do. We're going to have to do some value engineering along the way, certainly to get the price down to the budget that we had set for this construction. That's really going to double the size of the space. Certainly going to add more dignity, more logistics. We're going to officially now be listed as a historic site for tourists to come here and other things. Plus we had that elevator that our pioneers, many of them are not here now because they need elevators and those kind of things to get in and not have to deal with the stairs. So that's coming as well. So the campaign is still undergoing. We do have some articles that's going to be in the Muslim Journal. We want to thank Imam Abdul Haq, also Muslim Journal correspondent. He's going to have a series of articles in the Muslim Journal about the campaign and about the importance of why people should support this campaign nationally in terms of what this facility here represents nationally, also internationally as well. And so we'll be a series of articles on that, and because you certainly should know those who are a member here and visit here. And of course, the immediate thing is that this is the first mosque built in all of America by American citizens who were and happen to be descendants of enslaved Africans. This is the first one. We didn't know that at the time. The ones before this, not the first one built, but the ones before this were built by migrants from Syria and Lebanon. And this is the first one also built upon a national platform, part of a national movement, a part of a national aspiration. The other ones were just local, to service a local community. We're not a part of anything national. This was number 4, but also called a mosque. Various ways to give, and of course this is a sheet, and of course it's on the website. Again, we have Cash App, Venmo, PayPal. You can go to the website again. Amazon also, you can put us down for 5%, 0.5% can come to the masjid when you make a purchase. And of course you can mail your payment in or call on the telephone as well. And I've already mentioned the fish fry again, so that's be there and be on time so we can take care of business and then also enjoy ourselves and try to strengthen our bonds as well. We have a series of events on opioid response and recovery, a series, and they need to have support. These things are done in partnership with the local government. And of course, they give grants to put these things on. To help, we also get a chance to hire people, a part of those funds, to help with these programs. But we definitely need attendance. At one point, we're going to be shutting the block down, having a big festival here for the local community and others to come here. But please put this in your bank beginning Friday, August the 26th, which is next Friday from 2:30 to 4 o'clock. Right here on the block, right here, after Jumah. Try to plan your day where you can stay here and participate in that, because we have to turn these numbers in. And those numbers determine future grants and future opportunities again to work with the city. That's why we have to have participation. So promote it and get people involved. It's going to be on site and virtual. Both numbers count now. If you can't be here physically, at least join us virtually between those times. So 26th, 28th, well actually that whole weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, we have things going on. And some are going to be on site and virtual. Some will be just virtual. But look at the bulletin and also check the website as well to get the Zoom information. And we also send something out. Share. We know that our share and our food distribution and our Feed the Homeless DC programs They are growing. They're seriously growing. We definitely need people to help all the time, to help deliver packages, to help put the stuff together. We're getting grants also to help get more foods, more items, more grocery items to put in those boxes. And we're doing tons of food every month right now. And they just not just for our community. We are helping other communities, other neighborhoods, other people of faith, senior communities. We are helping them. In fact, now, a lot of the ANCs, they're coming to us, asking us, can we help these communities? And then faith leaders, the same thing, because they know our program is growing. And that's because of you. Well, we need more people to help us, again, to package, deliver, and take the things to these individuals as well. Now, next Sunday, we hope everybody can come out. We're going to have a Community Family Day. Community Family Day, and this is before the things start to get cold. Community Family Day, Sunday, August the 28th. This is going to be held at Watkins Regional Park, and that's in Upper Marlboro. And again, the main table of food will be provided for. There'll be a lot of activities, and so that'll be going on that day. The sign looks like 12 o'clock. Starting at 12 o'clock, so please come out, bring your children. Again, this is family. Community Family Day. Community Family Day. So we expect quite a few to be there for that. Games, prizes, activities for all ages, etc. For that event. Our International Sisters Network, we know this is their 25th fashion show that's coming up. That'll be taking place September the 18th from 2 to 6. That's for women only, and they have a history. This is the 25th one, and they do support the Masjid. They generally always make a donation to the Masjid. So see that. Our biggest event of the year, everybody should pass the word on this and stay tuned. The Time to Be Grateful event is a 3-day weekend event. It's going to be combined. We're hosting that. Also, our 85th anniversary culminating event. We've been doing events almost every month about our 85th anniversary. We're going to have a big culminating event at that time, December the 9th, 10th, and 11th. 9th, 10th, and 11th. A lot of people are interested in that. 85 years is a long time for Islam in this country to be public. It's a long time. We know we were public about 100 or so years ago. And we were part of that foundational piece. Again, I'll tell you the history of the mosque that came out of that community right here. So it's a very big deal. We've got attention from the White House on down. The different departments here are involved. Obviously, the mayor, they all are interested in being able to send letters, to come here physically, to speak. So it's going to be a great time. We do have a youth component. We have a young adult component. It's going to be workshops, dynamic workshops. Imams are going to be meeting. The medical people are going to be meeting. Different professions are going to be meeting. Also, there are the military folks, the veterans, they're going to be meeting. A lot of things are going to be taking place over the course of that 3 days. So we want to hear, even from our brother that spoke, I know things were taking place before that, but we still, because he's in that arena, we want to have him involved in that as well. Okay, so that's going to take place at the Hilton Crystal City. The Hilton Crystal City. Registration is on. It just hit today. It went live today to register for that event. Get in early because you'll save a lot of money if you get in early. And the early bird event goes on to November the 1st. And again, we expect a lot of international. We've gotten comments from international leaders who are interested, ambassadors who are here locally that are interested. So this is really hope to be a great event to summarize our history and also prepare us for the present future. Point us in the present future. We're going to deal with the present future and where we go for the next 85 years, etc. A part of that's going to be a tour. We're going to do a tour. Again, I mentioned Imam Benjamin's name earlier. You know he has his own company. He's going to be facilitating tours, and a lot of people want to go to see the Clara site. Now, if those here locally, definitely should make sure you get to go see the Clara. That thing is coming up. It's looking nice. A $50 million project dedicated. It's a legacy project dedicated to our beloved sister, the strongest Muslim name for a woman in the history of Islam in America. You don't even hear about a Muslim woman name before her, Clara Muhammad. And she was dynamic. And we forget that she is the one. She is the one that brought her husband, Elijah Muhammad, to this. She was the foundation for that. And she did a lot of other dynamic things that you should get the book about. You have the book in the bookstore. You should get the book about her. But this is a legacy project. There's something in place that's on the site where the school used to be, the Sister Clara Muhammad School. So go by and look at it. People want to go by and look at it. It's coming up nicely. That's a legacy project. The first floor is going to be 100% Muslim businesses and community services. 100%. It's a 100% Muslim partnership already. 1%. And on the first floor, going to be 100% Muslim business, restaurant, the museum are going to be there, other community services are going to be there, business offices are going to be there. And we're not going to stop now that we can continue to do many other things. So this is, again, what we're doing. One of the biggest things taking place this year is also next month is we're going to do a dedication, a tribute to Imam W.D. Mohammed at the American Islamic College. This is in partnership with Study Al Islam. It's called A Way Forward, a New Mind for a New People. This is going to be a historical perspective on the ministry of Imam W.D. Mohammed. And again, I've mentioned to you the organization, Study Al Islam, and the American Islamic College. And the American Islamic College in Chicago, Imam Muhammad had a lot to do with its formation in Chicago. And it's just a dynamic list of presenters that's going to be a part of that whole symposium that Friday and Saturday, particularly Saturday. So if you're not going to be able to be there physically, hopefully you can make it virtually as well. But you should go to studyalislam.com to register for that event. And if you can make it there, again, this is a historical piece. It's the first time we've done something like this since his passing. This is the 14th year, the 14th anniversary since his passing. And this is a dynamic event, and there's really a lot of leaders, and we're going to hear a lot of different things, different aspects about what his life means and about how going forward into the destiny, how he carries us into the destiny, etc. So get involved with that, my dear respected brothers and sisters. I've already mentioned the Muslim Journal. Aside from the big event happening, please make sure that you're supporting the Muslim Journal. Stop by, get some papers. Papers should be starting to disappear. We got a discount. You want to grab about 10 and be the halves on to give out, please do so. Please do so. And with that, I think we're good to go. All right, assalamu alaikum.
Goodbye.